Okay. First of all, welcome everyone to another Aliyah Network lecture event. Before we get started, I do want to remind you, we are going to have a big event December 6th. So if you can save the date, it's going to be an evening of unity and inspiration, something a little bit different than we normally do. And we have some very special guest olim. So really save the date for that one. And now on to tonight. The Aliyah Network is happy to introduce Yaniv Gabbay, the co-owner of Gabai Real Estate. As an oleh himself who lives in Efrat with his wife and 4 children, Yaniv has the expertise and experience in helping home seekers and investors understand the process of buying new projects from start to finish. If you do have any questions for Yaniv, please just type them out in the chat button down below, and we will hopefully get to it at the end of the session. Thanks.
All right, Yaniv.
So before I get in, because we're we're a small forum, and I heard some of, I'm sorry, your name, I'm sorry, Marilee Katz, Marcy. So I heard some of Marcy's questions.
Oh, that was Marilee, sorry.
Marilee. So I heard some of Marilee's questions. I figure that I might as well just jump right in and answer what she said, because they're pretty on point questions, and I like tachlis. So regarding purchasing in Yehuda and Shomron, in Judea and Samaria over the green line, whatever you want, however you'd like to classify that. So I'm going to start off by saying I'm not an attorney, and you should always consult a real estate attorney for any professional legal related questions regarding real estate. If you purchase a property, to the best of my knowledge, and this is updated information as of now, and we are, my company does sell properties in Judea and Samaria. So if you do that, you said you were talking about different rights that you have as an oleh. The truth is that it would be best if you purchased the property over the green line in Karnei Shomron or wherever you'd like to purchase it before making Aliyah. If you purchase a property as a foreign buyer / investor, there is an incentive that the Israeli government has given foreign investors in order to get them to invest money and capital into Judea and Samaria, and what they basically do is give you a break on the purchase tax. You are exempt from paying a purchase tax over the green line. So if you were to buy in that area, you should first make the purchase and only then make Aliyah formally. That's regarding the rights as an oleh. As an oleh in general, there is if I'm not mistaken, across the board cap on your purchase tax. The purchase tax, and what I'm talking about is, of course, the tax that you're paying when you purchase a property. When you purchase a property in Israel, on the initial purchase price, you have to pay a tax. That tax was 8% for foreign buyers or investors. It is now 5%. They changed that. So they reduced that to get more people, especially because of Corona and everything else, to purchase properties in Israel. But that basically is a tax for anyone that is classified as an investor. And from the Israeli government's perspective, if you're purchasing a property as a foreign buyer, you're automatically an investor unless you can prove, and it's almost impossible, I've never heard of anybody being able to prove, unless you can prove that you do not own a single property outside of Israel. If you can prove that you don't own any properties at all, then you're purchasing your only property, and then you're exempt from that 5% tax. There's a tax scale without getting into it. But again, if you're a foreign buyer and you're thinking of making Aliyah, and you'd like to make Aliyah to Karnei Shomron, to Efrat, to Neve Daniel, to wherever, over the green line, first, and you're gonna buy, you're not gonna rent first purchase the property, and then go ahead and make Aliyah. Because then you save on that 5% purchase tax, which is substantial, or 2 to 3% depending on what type of property you're buying if you're making Aliyah. I think that should answer that question. Regarding yourself as a senior, that is going to come into play when you pay your annual property taxes. So if you're paying your annual property taxes as a senior, you get a discount, a heavy discount, if I'm not mistaken, about approximately 70%. Property taxes in Israel are not as hefty as they are in most places, at least that I know of in the United States, but it's still a great deal of money at the end of the day.
Marilee, did that help you out?
Well, I learned something because I did not know about that.
Yeah.
Very much so. So I don't want to take up the whole time, but here's a relevant question. There's this development they just broke ground, so it won't be ready for 2 or 3 years. I would buy an apartment for myself and one for my daughter and son-in-law. So would both be considered an investment? I mean, would I get these tax benefits on both apartments?
To the best of my knowledge, you would. To the best of my knowledge, you would, because you're purchasing it again as an investor. And it doesn't matter if you buy 1, 2, 4, 10, or 12, to the best of my knowledge. But again, you should consult an attorney to just make sure that that is accurate information and that is relevant information to exactly what you're purchasing. But if you're talking, and this is a good opportunity, if you're talking about purchasing in this new construction development, wherever you're purchasing, it doesn't matter. First of all, you should be matzliach and you should buy the right property for you, and you should be matzliach in your aliyah. That's a beautiful thing. It reminded me, I have a very special relationship with my great aunt. She's a survivor, and I go and see her on the weekends, on Fridays, and we sit and we talk in her balcony. It's like one of the best times that I have. And she told me about how she purchased in really before the independence of the state of Israel. She bought property in Netanya, like to this day, and she brought, and it's just it brings me back to that people take these chances and these leaps of faith. Like if you look most places in the world, I'd love to see the statistics of how many sight unseen purchases are done, especially in the type of range we're talking about. I mean, Israel is not a cheap country.
Right.
You're talking about minimum. People tell me, okay, I got $100,000. What kind of house can I build or whatever? You need serious money. You need serious capital. Banks are very stringent here. They give 70% financing to local buyers, 50% to foreigners. You need a lot of your own capital to purchase properties here. And yet people take that leap and they buy sight unseen, and it's a great thing. And for the most part, it only works out to their favor because the market has only gone up for a very long time, with a few exceptions and speed bumps on the way. But there have been issues, and not every single situation has been a perfect fairy tale. And it is important to take a number of things into consideration. And I'm happy for you to ask me questions along the way. I'm not, I don't have a real plan of attack here as far as what I'm saying, but I'm just going to talk about that process and try to break it down as well as I can. When you and just to try to get, give you some of the information that I think would be important, that I would tell my own great aunt who was purchasing, or my mother, or somebody that I loved, and explain the process to them. So number one, you want to, make sure that you can the first step in the process is to understand exactly how much the property is going to cost. To understand how much the property is going to cost, any property is going to cost, you have to know some of the variables. And there is a difference between purchasing a project, pre-construction, or even something that's brand new and semi-finished, and purchasing something secondhand. Number one, like I would put it on a side-by-side chart, but when you purchase secondhand, you're basically paying all the money up front. Okay, obviously you could take possession in 2, 3, 4, 6 months. I've done possessions on secondhand properties for a year. Okay, but for the most part, you're taking possession right away, and you have to pay up that money right away. Whereas pre-construction, the property's only ready in 2, 3 years. Obviously, you're making payments throughout. But with that being said, and that's an obvious for everybody, every payment that you make pre-construction is what they call samud lemadad bniya. That payment goes according to the building index. There's a building index in Israel, which is basically the cost of building. And what does that mean? It's the cost of materials, or the increase in the cost of materials, and the increase in labor. And that increase happens over time. So over the 2 or 3 year stint, that can go up by a few percentages. So if you agreed to a purchase price of 2 million shekel, that 2 million shekel can end up being, 2,200,000 shekel, because when you made that payment on the initial property, you made at least a 10% payment, because they'll only register a lien in your favor if you pay 10% or more. So you put down 10%. Now you're paying in accordance with the advancement of the construction. So if you paid now, you bought this apartment, you made a payment, 10%. 3 months later, they finish the shell of the building. You have to make another payment, let's say, of 15%. That 15% is 15% plus the building, whatever the building index is at that time. So if it stayed the same, great. You're making a 15% payment on 2 million shekel. If it went up, you have to add that. So you end up paying more, usually on average, when you purchase pre-construction than new construction, more than you agreed to in the beginning. And you need to take that into consideration. I like to tell, my clients to take between maximum 5%, maximum on the building index. It could be 1%, 1.5%, 2%, most likely it's on that average. But if 5% is going to break you, don't buy pre-construction. On top of that, when you purchase new construction, what almost never comes with the property, unless you're buying something ultra fancy, or the developer is giving unique incentives: no light fixtures, no built-in closets, no furniture, no appliances. They give you usually an allowance for a kitchen. So you have to you're going to usually add to that allowance, or you're just going to get whatever payment, depending on the developer. They're going to say, okay, we allowed you 20,000 shekel, 50,000 shekel, 100,000 shekel for the kitchen, and then you go and do that on your own. So it's good to understand that, okay, yes, I'm buying for 2 million shekel. I need to know that I've got about a 5% swing on the building index, maximum, probably around 2.5%. On top of that, I'm going to need to add to the kitchen. That's going to be another X amount of money, approximately. On top of that, I'd like to probably use a designer to be able to help me with the closets, with the furniture, appliances, etc., if I'm not going to physically be there. A lot of people can do that on their own, but it's good to have somebody accompany you. That designer, by the way, will also be there for you throughout the process. So you can take either a designer, and a lot of designers here actually specialize in project management. And then you hire a designer or contractor to basically oversee the project and make sure, keep them honest. When they said they're going to put 3 outlets on the left-hand side of the bedroom and 2 outlets on the right-hand side, that they actually did that. You want to have that in play as well. And that person will cost you money. That's another fee. That's another potentially 1% of the total purchase price. So it's important to understand that you're not just finishing at that price, and to know that going in, and to take that into consideration and use that also to your advantage to negotiate. And many developers here will make it like they will never negotiate and this is their price and they did their homework. You need to do your own homework. You need to look at what's currently for sale and what was recently sold. When you examine a property that you're interested in purchasing, there could be 10 other projects that are being built in that area. You need to know what's going on in that location, not just from a standpoint of they're going to block my view or they're going to be building for the next 5 years, like right outside of my window, but also from the standpoint of the value of the property and whether you're overpaying. You're usually not going to underpay. So it's important to know what is currently for sale and what was recently sold. And that's something that a person can really do on their own. It's not impossible. They make it sound impossible here, especially agents like me would like you to think that it's impossible. It's not. You really could even have somebody that's somewhat proficient in Hebrew go on the tax authority site, put in atar hamisim meidan nadlan. You put in Google atar hamisim meidan nadlan, the tax site information, real estate information, and then you just plug it in. I'm looking in Karnei Shomron. I want to see the last two in Karnei Shomron, the last 2 years, what things sold for. And then they tell you, 120 meters, and it's only 2 million shekel. And you're like, wait, but all of these properties are 120 meters for $1.5 million. What's going on? Goes, okay, well, we could give you this. They start knowing that, they don't have what they call a flyer here. They have somebody I'm not saying everyone's looking to rip you off, mamash lo. And there are a lot of developers that are very straight and honest, and they give you good prices, but it is good to keep everyone honest and not take anyone at their word, and to kind of be able to go and do your due diligence. And part of that due diligence on your end, not your attorney's end and not your engineer's end, part of your due diligence is for you to go and make sure that that information is correct that they're giving you. And that's important. So another thing that is important to take into consideration is the size that they give you. One of the biggest things here is how they measure apartments. And of course, we're in the country of very smart Jews that know that, and you can take 10 people and they have 100 opinions. Well, 10 people have 1,000 measurements. And what you need to, now they have a unified code of measuring. It's called Chok Mecher, the law of sale. Part of the law of sale is a unified code of measurement. It used to be that a developer would tell you that the property's size includes part of the staircase, your balcony, 10% of the roof, and God knows what. Today, they have to give you what they call contour of the property. In other words, it's not net space. It's from exterior portion of the wall to 50% of adjoining wall. So if you went, and that's not including any interior wall space. So if you have an apartment that's, let's say, 120 meters, you can take off about 15 to 20%. That's the interior of your apartment. So when you think, I've got this nice, beautiful 1,300 square foot home, nope, it's more like 1,000 square feet. Just know that. And that's fine. If you know that, you can work with it and understand that that's the situation. So it's very, very important to understand that. Okay, sorry, I was just looking at the please ask questions if you have it. Another thing that is very important, of course, to know, and I touched upon it a little bit before, is just to understand what the map is going to look like in the area. Because if the developer built this beautiful project with 12 buildings in this what's seemingly desolate area, and you have this gorgeous view of the mountains, chances are some other developers are going to do the same or have already permits to do the same, and so on. So it's important to know what they're building in and around your building. That's something that is a little more difficult for you to do, but that's something that you should ask your attorney, and your attorney definitely should know how to look that up and and say, look, it's A, B, C, D, E. And if they can't look it up, and sometimes they can, not because they're not good attorneys, but because they don't have the information updated on the government site yet, then you should then that attorney should hire an appraiser, and the appraiser, part of his job is also to tell you what the, especially when you specify that beforehand, what the actual building is going to be around you, and to make sure that no one's going to block your view, that you're not going to have construction on your head for the next 5 years, and so on and so forth. So you know the property's value, you know the costs involved in what you need to put down, and what you're going to need to be making payments on. You know what's going to be built around you. You know, those are very, very important, features and things to take into consideration. And you also need to know, obviously, if this is a reputable builder. And that's also not always so easy to tell in Israel, because there aren't there is a site called Takdim, which shows, let's say, some of the different, if somebody unfortunately got into a lot of lawsuits or had some issues or had problems, then you'll be able to see potentially some shady characters and what they've done in the past. But if somebody doesn't have that necessarily, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're excellent builders. It's important to ask them. This is the builder. Let's hear what they say. If they're a seasoned, good attorney, and it's worth taking someone and spending a little bit more. An attorney is somebody that I really believe you get what you pay for. You spend a little more money, especially pre-construction, especially as a foreign buyer who has to transfer funds. Not an easy thing to do today. It's important to have somebody that actually can do that homework on the builder and understand that this developer is either reputable or not reputable. That developer should, of course, be working in accordance with Chok Mecher. It's better to use somebody like that and not somebody that's personally financing the project. And the discrepancy there is one is using a bank to bankroll the project, and that bank is now guaranteed that insures your money. It also allows you, Chok Mecher also allows you to be able to basically, I'm not going to say like sue for any reason, but it makes the process much easier to hold the developer responsible for being late or for faulty construction, etc. That is very important, in my opinion. It is very important that when you purchase a property, you purchase that property post building permit, not pre-building permit. Obviously, there are deals done here pre-building permit, and there are combination deals, and there are a million different types of things. I think for you particularly, and for most people, like I personally am in the business here and live here, and I would feel much more comfortable
I think we broke, I think the sound
did.
broke up.
Sorry about that. Is this better?
Sorry,
Hello?
we're having a little bit of a choppy internet. It's nothing I can do about it. I do apologize, guys.
Okay, so I think it's very important that there is that guarantee, the bank guarantee, when you purchase pre-construction. The attorney also is going to basically tell you that you should send an engineer, and an engineer is different in pre-construction, obviously, or brand new construction. That engineer is your guarantee for that last payment. In other words, you're going to have an engineer come at least twice, at least. I've seen, 4 or 5 times, and each time you have to pay that engineer and come back each time. But they're basically coming, they're going to see before you take possession, The last amount of money is usually a very small amount, but it's still an amount. Let's say 10%. They always leave around 8%, 10%, 5% for the last payment, where you go. That's after they get the certificate of occupancy, Tofes Arba, and they're ready to hand over the key. And they're in a rush to just give you the key and goodbye. And technically, you still have, if you bought, again, with the law of sale, Chok Mecher, then you have warranties on different aspects of that construction. So you have 7 years for the shell, X amount of years for the kitchen, X amount of years for the air conditioning and infrastructure and so on and so forth. But that you don't want to rely on that. You want that property to be clean, in excellent working condition. And if the engineer has to come another 10 times, and each time you have to pay him 900 shekel each time, who cares? The property needs to be tip top, and only then do you make the last payment and get the key. Now, a lot of times if you used a person, which I highly recommend to use if you're purchasing pre-construction, some contractor, some specialist that's going to go and just do some checking every time, especially from the time that they've built the shell and they're starting to do the provisions on your property and the dividing of your property. You don't need to hire somebody for the next 3 years, but you're going to hire them for the last, let's say, 6 months that they're actually working on your property. It's important that that person obviously goes and then also comes back and checks and does everything right from the beginning. Trying to think of anything else that I didn't cover. Pre-construction, all those things are important. I think that it's interesting. The people ask me like what the story is now. How's the market? Corona, they must be getting killed out there and whatever. A lot of developers and whatever. Part of Chok Mecher like works to your benefit and it works against you, because having a bank bankroll a project also means that that bank has a veto power. Even if a developer actually wants to push product and sell, and they haven't sold a lot of apartments, and they want to even give you a bigger discount just to give you an incentive and start selling, the bank can say, wait a minute, we've appraised this property, and based on that, we've partnered up with you, Mr. Developer, that this property is really worth 2 million. So you can't sell it for 1.8, even if you wanted to. And a lot of developers are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place in certain locations. And I have seen, I don't know if we were going to talk about the market at all. I think that's something that's interesting to some people. And that's something that I have a somewhat of a unique perspective on. In certain areas, the market has been hit. People like to make it sound like, everything is unbelievable and the market's red hot and prices are only going up. In certain areas, primarily areas that have drawn foreign buyers, those areas have actually seen a very strong, steady flow of sales. But in areas that are not appealing or as appealing to foreign buyers, where there's what's called a market of mishaprei diur, people that have, are buying a 3-bedroom because they're selling a 4-bedroom and so on and so forth. That area is actually, those areas have gotten hurt, and I've even seen a decrease in some of the sales there. Okay, can you please explain the bank's role? I think that part was cut off. Okay, so I'll explain the bank's role. Hold on. Basically, a developer wants to develop property. That developer will take a bank to help finance that project. And we're not going to get into now what kind of project this is. Either they're building from scratch, they bought a lot and they're building buildings, or they're taking an existing building, and because of the zoning there at Tama 38 or different zoning incentives, they're now building on top of it. They have air rights, that whatever it is, they'll take a bank, and that bank will partner up with the developer. They'll help finance the project. There was a huge company in the and I think this happened in the 90s. No, it actually happened. Okay, sorry, I was on mute. So basically, there was a company called Hefziba. That company went under. A lot of people lost their apartments. it was financing things directly, financing their projects directly, and people really got stuck with half-finished apartments, and there wasn't a clear understanding of who the ownership goes to, and it was a big mess. So there was a law that they passed called Chok Hefziba, if I'm not mistaken. Don't remember exactly what year that was. And that law basically that is partnered up with the developer. You're making payments to the bank, and the bank is paying the developer. That way, if the developer gets stuck, the bank takes over the project and has the power of attorney to hire a new developer or a new contractor and finish the project. And every state, like because it becomes a little bit complicated when you purchase a property that's not yet built. You're purchasing really a right to that property. You don't have anything physically to show for it. So that right is guaranteed by that very bank. I think that explains it.
I don't think we're frozen. Are we frozen again?
Is there anything else? Does anybody have other questions?
That was great. Really, really informative. Here's a question I thought of now. You mentioned a person should look into the developer, make sure they're not shady and they're honest and trustworthy. Is that the same for an engineer? Can you trust, is that something a person should look into as well?
I did not hear your question. I'm sorry. Right. It was choppy.
So you mentioned earlier before committing to purchasing either pre-construction or new construction to make sure that, I think it was a developer, that they aren't shady and they're honest. Did you say it was a developer?
Yeah, you want to make sure that the developer, that the contractor, there's a yazam, a developer, and then there is, of course, the builder that the developer hires. Sometimes they're the one and the same. The same developer has a building company, and it'll be two, sides of the same coin. But in most cases, there's a developer and there's a builder.
Now, is that also the same for an engineer? I mean, can you trust all engineers? Is that something you should also look into?
You can't trust all of anybody or anything, anywhere in the world. Not in America, not in Israel, not anywhere. So you should, get recommendations just like you got from whoever recommended a good attorney, and not the developer. Don't ask the developer for a good attorney. Ask somebody that's biased, that's objective and not biased. And then the same goes for an engineer. And there are excellent English-speaking engineers that can give you reports in English, and they can come and they can check. Again, pre-construct engineers are best used for secondhand properties, or if you're buying brand new construction that's already finished. You buy an apartment, you're buying from the developer, but it's finished, use an engineer. Otherwise, I would choose a good contractor that understands the process, the work process that is around construction all the time, but works on a smaller scale, because en malasot, you're working on mass scale. If you're buying in a project of 100, 200, 5,000 units, quality control is not always amazing. So I would have a contractor that is a high quality contractor. And there are a lot of people, it's like kind of the PI to the cop. The cop retires, he becomes a PI. So you hire somebody that's like sick of being a contractor. He's a little, older, smarter, more savvy. You hire that person to oversee the project as soon as they start doing a parcelization on your property. You don't need them to check if they built the shell well. If you need a contractor to check that they're doing a good job on the shell, you shouldn't buy in that project. You got to have some faith in what they're doing there. Also just to get the some answers here. A foreign buyer absolutely can get a mortgage in Israel. They get up to 50%. There are ways of taking 50% mortgage and then like another 10% somehow as like as a short-term, loan, and then they'll package that all into the mortgage. So I would say count on coming to the table with at least 50, not 50%. You want 50% of that money going into the project. Then you've got to pay purchase tax if it's not over the green line, as we said. And it's over 1.4 million shekel and you're buying it as a foreign buyer. You're going to be paying potentially an agent's fee. Buyers here, if they use an agent, pay an agent, which is approximately 2%. Some agents will discount. And then you have approximately 1% for an attorney. Some attorneys will discount. And then you'll have all those other specialists that I told you about that cost a few thousand shekel. Obviously, if you're taking a contractor and hiring that contractor because you purchased pre-construction to oversee the parcelization of your property and to put to oversee that project, that's going to cost you a lot more. That can cost in the tens of thousands of shekels, like another 1% on the deal. And you want to also take into account, as we said, pre-construction, the building index, pre-construction, the kitchen, and cupboards and light fixtures and furniture and appliances. And you want to take into consideration as well the exchange rate and transferring money. That costs a fee. There are companies that can help you with that, but all of that costs a fee. You want to know, like if you're buying pre-construction, you want to take in, I'm giving like a gross number, around 12% above that purchase price. Building index, fees, etc. Maybe a little more if you're also including furniture, appliances, etc. Look, when it comes to politics and who's president and how that's gonna affect the purchasing over the green line, it absolutely has an effect, and that can absolutely get what it'll have more of an effect on are building permits. But once there is a permit, it's I have not seen too many cases of them stopping construction, unless you're really in the unfortunate case of like they just got the building permit as they're talking and focusing on building, not building, and we have a government in the US that's not for that building, and he happens to come to the visit on that time. Barring that, it's a matter more of building permit. So again, beyond the green line, within the green line, it doesn't matter. I would really stick as a foreign buyer, especially to purchasing a property post building permit. What do you need besides money to get a mortgage as a foreigner? So I am not a mortgage broker, and I don't deal directly with mortgages, but I can give you a good general idea, and it's a very obvious idea. You need to show you need to show income, you need to show assets, you need to show what your ability to return that payment is. There, you can go, and this is a nice another little tip. You can go online and go and put in Hebrew, machshevon, calculator in Hebrew, machshevon, mashkanta, machshevon, mashkanta, calculator, mortgage calculator. Put that in, you'll get to the Mizrahi Tfachot website. It's the best one to calculate your mortgage. And you'll say, look, I'd like to borrow this. Let's say it's a 2 million shekel apartment. You're going to be able to borrow up to 50%, assuming 1 million shekel. And then you could say, oh, if I borrow 1 million shekel and I take a 30-year loan, it's going to cost me about 8,000 shekel a month. Can I do that or can I not do that? Can my income, do I have income to show that I can do that? And if you do, then you're probably going to get an ishur ekroni from the bank, which is a principal approval from the bank. Because the bank, a mortgage here, I'm sure in the States it works the same, approves you as an individual, as a buyer, and it approves your property, which is why it's good to get that due diligence on your own on whether that property is worth it or not, and not overpay for a property, because you might not even get that mortgage. They could say, look, you could get a mortgage, you could afford a mortgage and borrow 4 million shekel, and you're buying a 2 million shekel apartment, but we don't believe your apartment's worth 2 million shekel. So we're only giving you 50% on 1 million shekel. It's important to know that the value is there. And if you're heavily reliant on a mortgage, I would absolutely, or even in any way reliant on a mortgage, bring an appraiser before you sign any contract to give you that. It's not always done here, but I would do that if you're heavily reliant on the mortgage.
You need to have a question. You see the question there?
Yeah. Is it harder to purchase a property off a plan if you already live in Israel? Is it harder to purchase a property off a? The truth is, and what's interesting is, if you're purchasing a property off plan, whether you live in Israel or America, it's a level playing field. That's what's nice about purchasing off plan from abroad, because you really don't see what's going on there. You don't see the only advantage that you have in Israel is that the first thing any Israeli asks a developer is, what else have you built? And then you can physically go and see some of the other projects that developer built, or that contractor built, or whoever's building the project. You can get a feel for the area that they're building, so you can get an idea of like what the topography is like. And topography plays a big part. And I see people getting potched a little bit on the topography here. I'm originally from Teaneck, pretty flat. So there's this hill and that hill, but for the most part, I lived in a flat area in Teaneck. And then I come to Efrat, and if I want to go to like the supermarket, I need to like take an oxygen mask and like.
I accidentally muted you 1 second.
Okay, so as I was saying that, I live in Efrat and I live on the bottom of the hill. And if I want to go up the hill to get some groceries, I have to it's a labor intensive activity for me. At the end of the day, if you're purchasing on plan, a lot of times when you buy on a hill, it's gorgeous and it's beautiful and you see the view and everything else. The question is also convenience and how, where, and walking, etc., and how easy that's going to be. It's important to take that into consideration. That's something that if you're physically here, it's a little bit easier to gauge. Is there an average amount that it costs to build per square meter on both sides of the green line? Wow. So no, because I can build per meter at 80,000 shekel a meter in Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem, I can build at 20,000 shekel a meter. And in Efrat, I can build at 15,000 shekel or 13,000 shekel a meter. And I can build in other parts of Yehuda v'Shomron at 8,000 shekel a meter. So it's a big spread. It's a very big spread, obviously, depending on where you are. If you're going to be first line to the sea in Tel Aviv, that's going to be one price. If you're going to be, all the way in at the end of, as they say in Hebrew, Sof HaOlam Shmona, Sof HaOlam Smola in Yerucham, that's going to be a very different price per meter. But it all depends also on what that means. You building. There's a very romantic idea of building your home in Israel and building your own little house in this gorgeous, serene setting and having like a little farm and a little this and a little that. It's not as practical.
Just want to know, are we the only ones experiencing this frozen?
Yeah, we froze again.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. Bottom line, there's a huge spread. Huge spread. Depends on where you want to buy. And it's not hard to gauge what those prices are going to be, but it's very, very micro. Very micro. Meaning it's different neighborhoods. You could buy an Ir Yamim in Netanya for 40,000 or even 50,000 shekel a meter, and you can buy in Netanya for 20 or even 15,000 shekel a meter. Huge difference. Imagine one apartment of 100 meters costing you $700,000, another apartment of this in the same meterage costing you about $1.6 million, just to understand what that means. So huge spread in the same town. Do most Israeli banks require cosigners regardless of proof of income? That is an excellent question. I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know.
Extra point for stumping Yaniv.
Sorry.
Yeah. Apologize for the internet connection again, folks, but it
froze again. Hello?
You need to be with us. Are we all together here, guys?
Here's, I presume, if you're a local buyer and I know that if you're a local buyer and if you have the income and have the assets, they won't require you to have a co-signer. If you're in a certain age group, there is age discrimination here. So if you're above a certain age, they will have a co-signer and they'll make you take out an insurance policy and so on. But they make everybody take out an insurance policy. As far as foreign buyers, I don't know if they require everyone to have a co-signer. I don't think so, but I don't know that 100% for a fact. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So you're a developer, or you're an agent there, or you do everything there? You're a property manager as well?
No, I don't manage properties. I don't develop. I'm just a broker, just a real estate broker. Can a project sell homes themselves, or do developers always have to do it? Interesting. Okay, so usually there's a developer. That developer and builder could be one and the same, and it depends on the scope. I know the answer got cut off, so I'll try to do that again. So basically, it all depends. There are very small projects like Tama 38 projects. Basically, that's a rezoning ordinance that it's something to give incentive to buildings to earthquake-proof their buildings and bring in an outside party I keep using the word developer, but outside party contractor. In those cases, small projects, then you'll have basically a contractor act as his own developer and he'll sell homes. And bigger projects, there's usually a developer involved because they're going to look to almost always rezone an area, and that requires a big headache and a lot of bureaucracy depending on where they're doing it. Certain municipalities are easier than others, but they're almost all very difficult and intricate. And somebody that's involved usually in just building, that's what they do. And they're not going to now go and run back and forth to the municipality and get plans approved and come up with financing and deal with the banks. So most large projects, almost all of them, are developer oriented. Sometimes that developer also has his own contractor company, like a construction company. Small projects where they're just adding 2 floors to an existing building and re-shelling the building for Tama 38, which is another discussion. So that a lot of times you'll see a builder do that and sell the apartments directly. I hope that answers the question. Any other questions?
Looks like
You
we
can
all
just pay them whatever flat. You can't just pay them whatever flat fee. I don't really understand that question. What flat fee as far as not paying them in accordance with the building index? Is that the question? So if that's the question, then you can often negotiate with the developer and say, look, I'm willing to pay you a lot of the money now, but you don't really want to do that. You want to pay as they progress in the construction, especially smaller projects, because then you're keeping them honest and the money, is going towards milestones in the construction. But you could say, look, especially a project that's pretty much finished and they only have 3-4 months left and the apartment's basically done, then you could say, I don't want to pay a building index for 4 months. Take 80% now, I'll pay 20% later, and you can kind of negotiate that into the deal. I hope that answers your question.
Do we have any other questions for Yaniv? This has been incredible, by the way, Yaniv. Not surprised.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Not surprised. We are coming up a few minutes to the end of the hour, so we'll give it another minute. Anybody else want to jump in?
If I could just ask, is there a possibility to schedule a private, just a conversation with Yaniv to discuss further details?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll make sure to hook you up with that after this is over for sure. Just
My pleasure.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Is there an email? Does Yaniv have an email address that in case I have a question?
You want to put your email in the chat box, Yaniv?
Yeah,
Sure.
that would be the best. Put in the chat box.
Sure.
Great. So you guys can grab that there, of course.
Yeah.
We are coming up to the end of the hour, so maybe unless there's another question last minute here.
Okay, well, I want to thank you, Yaniv. This was really great.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
Really informative.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Have a great evening.
Have a great night and batzlacha to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yaniv. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night.